right. Well, what do you think about when you think about the Kentucky Derby? Maybe it's the fancy hats, the horses, the race, but do you know the history of the Kentucky Derby and its African American influence? Here's a history lesson dating back to 1875.
To most people, this is what the Kentucky Derby looks like. Flashy hats and fascinators for the women, unique suits for the men, and beautiful, powerful thoroughbreds. The jockeys are also a main attraction, but they look much different than they used to. In 1875, for the first running of the Derby, African Americans dominated the racetrack. 13 of the 15 jockeys were black, including the winning jockey Oliver Lewis. This is part of the history you can learn about at the Kentucky Derby Museum.
For many of them, when they see it, it's the first time they're learning about the history, so there's a sense of discovery.
And a sense of appreciation. The racial tension we're seeing in 2020 with inequality and injustice was also felt back then.
That segregation impacted African Americans in daily life, so it impacted them on the racetrack.
The horse racing sport went from 15 of the first 28 derbies being won by African American jockeys to decades without a black person mounting for the race.
As we get into the 20th century, African American jockeys start to disappear, and the reason, of course, is the segregation of the 19th and 20th century.
It became difficult and sometimes impossible for black jockeys to even get licenses to ride. And if they did, they ran the risk of being hurt. One example, Jimmy Winkfield.
And his white counterparts on the racetrack tried to physically intimidate him by basically pushing his mount and himself against the rail. That could injure Jimmy Winkfield, could injure his horse.
The museum documents this history, paying homage to the jockeys who laid the foundation for the Derby. They were African American, and they're often forgotten. This exhibit helps to keep their stories and their memories alive.